She was sweet, young, and my kids adored her, until I found out how she knew them so well. My husband swore she was just our babysitter, but when I looked closer, I saw the truth hiding in plain sight, in crayon drawings and security footage. This is how I discovered the woman caring for my children was also sleeping with my husband. When you're a working mom, you learn to cling to the small mercies life throws your way. For me, one of those mercies came in the form of Emily. She was 24, fresh-faced, and had the kind of warmth that children naturally gravitated toward. My kids, 6-year-old Hannah and 4-year-old Noah, took to her immediately, as if she had been in their lives forever. The way she smiled, the patience in her voice, the way she crouched to their eye level, it all seemed too good to be true. And maybe that's exactly what it was. She didn't come into our lives by chance. My husband, Daniel, had suggested her when I told him my work schedule was tightening. He said she was the daughter of a coworker, looking for extra income while finishing grad school. I didn't think twice about it. The idea of having someone I could trust at home with the kids while I navigated long hours at the office was a relief. From the start, she was efficient. She cooked healthy meals, played board games with the kids, and even taught Hannah how to braid her hair, something I had been too clumsy to manage. She was always early, always cheerful, and never complained when I was late coming home. Looking back, I see how easily I let her into my life. I was exhausted, constantly juggling deadlines and school runs, and Emily filled a gap I didn't even realize had grown so wide. But even then, there were moments, tiny, flickering red flags that I brushed off, like how she knew Noah hated peas without me telling her, or how she already knew Hannah's favorite bedtime story. I laughed it off as her being intuitive. If only I had listened to my gut instead of brushing it aside. Emily wasn't just a babysitter. She felt like part of the family. The kids would squeal when they saw her, running to the door before I could even get my shoes off. She'd greet them with big hugs and some fun idea for the evening painting, baking cookies, or building pillow forts in the living room. I noticed how quickly my stress melted away knowing the kids were happy and cared for. On more than one occasion, I came home to the smell of fresh-baked brownies and the sound of giggling from the living room. Daniel would be there too sometimes, helping them build forts or pretending to be a monster during their games. It felt wholesome, safe. Emily was thoughtful in ways that went beyond her job description. She'd leave little notes for me about what the kids ate, funny things they said, or new games they'd invented. She'd even fold laundry if she had extra time. I caught myself thinking how lucky I was to have found someone like her, someone who seemed to genuinely love my kids. But in hindsight, maybe she loved them for all the wrong reasons. It wasn't until I overheard Hannah talking to Emily one evening that something inside me stirred. Hannah had said, "Remember when we all went to the park before Mommy got home?" I froze in the hallway. Emily laughed and replied softly, "Yes, sweetie, but that's our little secret." I told myself it was probably nothing, maybe a surprise for me, maybe an innocent outing. I didn't push it, but the way Emily said it, the intimacy in her voice, it lingered in my mind longer than I wanted to admit. The more time Emily spent in our home, the more I began noticing small things that didn't quite add up. One evening, I came home to find Emily and the kids playing a game in the living room. It was a game Hannah had made up, complete with rules that only she understood. Emily knew them perfectly, every single rule, as if she had played it many times before. Another time, Noah spilled juice on the couch. Before I could even react, Emily was already reaching for the exact stain remover I kept under the sink, something I'd never shown her. I told myself she must have asked the kids where it was, but the thought of her moving so naturally in my home, it made me uneasy. Then there was the time she comforted Noah after a nightmare. I had been upstairs folding laundry when I overheard her. She was humming a tune I recognized instantly. It was the lullaby I sang to him when he was a baby. I froze on the stairs. I had never sung it in front of her. When I asked later how she knew it, she smiled and said, "Kids tell you everything." It was such a harmless answer, but it didn't sit right. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease with her. Sometimes, when I walked in the door, they'd be chatting in the kitchen like old friends. He'd laugh at her jokes in that familiar, warm way I used to love. I told myself it was just friendliness, that I was being paranoid. But late at night, lying in bed, those little oddities would swirl in my mind like puzzle pieces I couldn't yet fit together. and deep down, I had a feeling I wouldn't like the picture they made. It happened on a Thursday. I'd managed to finish work early, a rare gift, and decided to surprise the kids by picking up their favorite ice cream on my way home. When I walked in, the house was quiet, too quiet. I set the ice cream down and went looking for them. That's when I saw her, Emily, standing in the kitchen, wearing my husband's old gray hoodie. It wasn't just any hoodie. It was the one he'd had since college. The one I wore on cold mornings when I made coffee. The one that still faintly smelled like him no matter how many times I washed it. Emily froze when she saw me. Her hands fidgeted with the sleeves, and for a split second her face flickered with something nervousness, guilt, before she pasted on a smile. "Oh, hey." It was chilly, so I grabbed this from the laundry room. "Hope that's okay," she said casually. I forced a smile back. Of course, but inside, my stomach was twisting. The laundry room was off the kitchen, but that hoodie wasn't in there. I knew because I had folded it 2 days ago and placed it neatly in Daniel's closet. The kids came running in then, breaking the tension. Emily quickly changed the subject, asking if they could have some ice cream. I played along, pretending nothing was wrong, but the image of her in his hoodie burned into my mind. That night, Daniel brushed off my questions about where Emily might have gotten it. Maybe she grabbed it by accident. "You're overthinking," he said, but my gut told me I wasn't. A week later, the final piece of the puzzle came from the most innocent source, Hannah's drawings. She'd been sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by crayons and markers, while I prepped dinner. "Look, Mommy," she called, holding up a picture. At first, I smiled. It was clearly a family portrait. Me, Daniel, Hannah, and Noah. But my smile faded as I looked closer. In the picture, I was standing on one side of the paper, a few feet away from the others. Daniel and Emily were holding hands, with big red hearts floating over their heads. Hannah and Noah stood beside them, all smiles. "Sweetheart," I asked carefully, "who's this next to Daddy?" "That's Emily," she said brightly. "They're best friends. She's been Daddy's friend for a long time. Even before she started babysitting. She used to visit before you got home from work." Her words sliced through me. My hands trembled as I set the drawing down. "Does she visit often?" I asked, my voice tight. "Uh-huh. Sometimes they go to the park without us. And sometimes we all play games before you get back." I managed to smile and nod, but my mind was already racing. Every odd moment, every too familiar detail suddenly made sense. Emily didn't just know my kids because she babysat them. She knew them because she'd been in their lives behind my back. And Daniel had brought her into my home, under the guise of helping me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Hannah's words over and over. "She's been Daddy's friend for a long time. She used to visit before you got home." I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Emily really was just a family friend. Maybe Daniel had introduced her casually before I knew her as a babysitter. But deep down, my gut screamed otherwise. I started mentally cataloging every strange moment I'd brushed off: the lullaby, the hoodie, the ease with which she navigated my home. They weren't coincidences. They were breadcrumbs I had ignored. The next morning, I tested Daniel. Over breakfast, I casually asked, "So, how exactly do you know Emily's parents?" He hesitated, a split-second pause before saying, "Oh, from work. Her dad and I used to be in the same department." He didn't look me in the eye. About the way he said it felt rehearsed, like a line he'd practiced. I let it go outwardly, but inside, suspicion hardened into resolve. That day at work, I couldn't focus. I pulled up our old home security app on my phone, one we hadn't used in months since Daniel said it was unnecessary with Emily around. The cameras were still there, though, and one pointed right at the front door. An idea began to take shape. If they were meeting before I got home, the camera would catch it. All I had to do was be patient. But I wasn't going to rush. I needed proof so undeniable that even Daniel couldn't talk his way out of it. The next week, I told Daniel I'd be home late because of a work meeting. In reality, I left the office 2 hours early and parked a few blocks from our house where I could see the driveway without being seen. At first, nothing happened. Emily's car was already there, which was normal. The kids were probably inside with her. But 10 minutes later, Daniel's car pulled up. My heart pounded as I watched him get out, carrying nothing, no groceries, no work bag. He knocked on the door instead of using his key. Emily opened it, smiling like she'd been waiting for him. And then he kissed her. Not a polite peck, a slow, deliberate kiss that left no room for misinterpretation. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My first instinct was to storm in, drag her out of my house, and demand answers. But something in me said, not yet. Instead, I drove away before they could see me. I needed to be smart. One confrontation without evidence could end with him gaslighting me, making me doubt what I'd seen. That night, I came home as usual. Emily greeted me like nothing had happened. Daniel was in the shower. The kids were happily coloring at the table. I looked at Emily, really looked at her. The easy smile, the soft voice, the way she glanced toward the hallway when Daniel came out. It was all an act. And I decided right then that I would be the better actor. The next day, while Emily was watching the kids, I pretended I'd forgotten something at home and returned quietly. She didn't hear me come in. I could hear her in the living room, playing with Hannah and Noah. I slipped into the office, shut the door, and logged into the security camera app. The footage from the day before was still there. I hit play. There it was, Daniel pulling up, knocking on the door, and Emily greeting him with that intimate kiss. My hands shook as I saved the clip to my phone, but I didn't stop there. I scrolled through older footage, going back weeks. Over and over, I saw the same pattern. Emily arriving early, Daniel getting home before me, the two of them sharing quick touches, lingering looks, and sometimes disappearing into the bedroom hallway for long stretches before reappearing with the kids. I felt sick. It wasn't just an affair, it was happening in my home, in front of my children. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, the hum of the computer filling the silence. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, in front of the kids, and let her feel the humiliation she'd earned. But the rational part of me knew I needed to plan my strike. If they wanted to play house in my absence, then I'd make sure the ending of their little fantasy would be one they'd never forget. From that moment on, I became an actress in my own life. I smiled at Emily when she arrived. I thanked her for helping with the kids. I even laughed at her stories. To Daniel, I was the same busy, slightly tired wife I'd always been. But inside, I was cataloging everything, every touch, every shared look, every moment they thought I wasn't paying attention. One evening, Emily mentioned how nice it was that Daniel helped out so much with bedtime routines. I wanted to throw my drink in her face. Instead, I smiled sweetly and said, "Yes, he's very hands-on." I started leaving subtle traps, placing items in specific spots in the bedroom to see if they'd been moved, spraying my perfume on the bedspread to see if it lingered or was washed away. Every time, the changes confirmed what I already knew. The more I played along, the more confident they became. They laughed louder, touched more freely. They thought I was blind. But I wasn't blind. I was watching, recording, and preparing. The day of reckoning came on a Saturday. I told Daniel I wanted to have a family dinner to thank Emily for all her help. He seemed a little hesitant, but agreed. I set the table beautifully candles, nice plates, the works. Emily arrived, smiling as always. Halfway through the meal, I excused myself, saying I had something to show them. I returned with a small stack of Hannah's drawings, placing them gently on the table. Daniel looked puzzled. Emily froze. "This one's my favorite," I said, sliding the picture of Daniel and Emily holding hands across to him. "Hannah says you've been friends for a long time." Daniel's face paled. Emily's fork clattered onto her plate. Before they could speak, I pulled out my phone and hit play on the security footage. The sound of their kiss filled the dining room. Daniel stammered. Emily started crying. I stayed calm. "You will both get out of my house tonight. You will not see my children again, Emily. And Daniel, don't even think about trying to talk your way out of this." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Daniel tried to apologize, saying it just happened, and that he never meant to hurt me. His words were hollow. Emily sobbed, begging me to let her explain, but I refused. They left that night, separately. I locked the door behind them and collapsed onto the couch, shaking. The kids were upstairs, blissfully unaware. I knew I'd have to explain Emily's absence, but not yet. not while my voice still trembled with rage. I called a lawyer the next morning. Whatever love I'd had for Daniel had died at that dinner table. For days afterward, Hannah and Noah kept asking where Emily was. Did she move away? Can she come over? I told them Emily had to go away for school. It wasn't the truth, but it was kinder than telling them she'd been the reason Mommy and Daddy were splitting up. At night, I cried silently, mourning not just my marriage but the trust I'd lost. The house felt emptier without Daniel's presence and Emily's constant laughter with the kids, but emptiness was better than betrayal. I threw myself into work and the kids' routines. Slowly, life took on a new rhythm. I didn't rush into new relationships. My priority was rebuilding my life, brick by brick, with honesty at the core. Looking back, betrayal didn't crash into my life. It slipped in quietly, wearing a sweet smile and holding my children's hands. But I survived it, and I'll never let anyone play me blind again. Sometimes betrayal doesn't storm into your life. It slips in quietly, smiling, patient, and holding your children's hands. I walked away with my dignity and my kids intact. But I'll never forget the day I realized the person I trusted most was the one breaking me apart from the inside.
And that was the day she realized the babysitter's smile wasn't innocent. It was a mask. The crayons told the truth before the adults ever did. She walked away with proof, her dignity, and her kids, and left her husband to live with his choices. Stories like this remind us that betrayal doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it's already sitting in your living room. If you've been through something like this, your story matters. Drop it in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it. Up next, I've got another jaw-dropping story about a groom who caught his own sister kissing his bride the night before his wedding. Click here to watch and remember, every secret eventually comes to light.